Hey everybody, welcome back to another fun and exciting Algebra 1 class. Today's lesson will be getting into 7.4 in your book, factoring. Again, we're still in the factoring chapter, so this time we're factoring trinomials. Almost the same thing that we did in 7.2. We're just going to add just a little bit, and that is now we're going to have what we call an A term that is not a 1. Okay, you're like, what does that mean? All right, take a look over here. I'll show you here on my screen. Remember that we have the A term, all right, and that's this one out here. We have the B term and we have the C term. In the ones that we were doing things like x squared plus 5x plus 7. So in other words, the B was the 5, the C was the 7, and the X was always, or the A was always a 1. Okay, so we haven't seen anything where this number out here is something like a 9, for example. Okay, that's what we're going to be doing in this lesson, is we're going to be doing these now where that A term is something other than a 1. So go ahead and look in your book on page 234. And on page 234, you'll see at the top, factoring ax squared plus bx plus c, where a does not equal 1. All right, so there's lots of words there, and we can take the time to look at all the words and see what they say. But in essence, you're going to get the same information that we already went through in 7.2. In fact, you can see right here, the method taught in 7.2, okay, is basically going to be the same thing that we're going to use. Then you come down here and it says that we're going to do the unfoil. It says the reverse of foil, but we're going to unfoil it. And notice that we're only concerned with the O and the I terms, or only concerned with that middle term. So the process doesn't change. It still looks almost identical to what we were doing. It's just going to take us a little bit longer to get to the answer. And you'll see why here in just a second. You're like, longer? Like, man, those other ones were long. I know, but it's just more of the same process. You just have to keep doing the same thing over and over until you get that middle term to work out. Remember, I said it's like a puzzle. You just keep working on the puzzle until you get it to come out. All right. I showed you this sign matrix for the ones that the A does equal 1. Now this is the sign matrix when A does not equal 1. All right. If you'll notice, the plus plus stays the same, okay? And you get plus plus. The minus plus also stays the same, and you get minus minus, okay? Now, this one can potentially change a little bit, but for the most part, this one's going to stay the same. These two right here are different when we're doing they do not that the A does not equal 1. Notice that they're both the same, and I wrote them like this for a reason. On the other one, I told you which one was bigger, right? You remember me showing you that, where I said that one was bigger, and then this one was going to be the smaller one, okay? Well, that's different now. It could be either one, because again, you'll see as we get into these, it can go either way. Like this, in this case, when you get a plus minus, this one could be the smaller one, and this one could be the bigger one. And it's almost hard to tell now because we're dealing with factors of the A term as well, so it's kind of hard to say which one's the bigger and which one's the smaller. So here's the thing: when you get these ones that are like this, so a plus minus or a minus minus, just know that one is going to be a plus and one is going to be a minus every time. So one is going to be a plus, one is going to be a minus. You just have one of each, okay? If you don't have one of each, then you're not going to be able to get this negative sign right here, okay? All right, with all that being said, let's go ahead and let's try to solve one of these now, okay? So here it is. Here is our first one that we're going to solve. Notice we have a 2 right here. Like, what is going on? That's not what we had hoped for, right? We hoped that would be a 1 or not even existent. If it's non-existent, then it's a 1. So if this is not here, then that means that it's a 1 out front, right? So it's not a 0 out front. It's always a 1. The coefficient, the understood coefficient when there's nothing there, is a 1. All right, so here we go. What I would say to do first is just follow the same steps that we did before. What did we do here? We factored the first one. Now this is going to look a little different. We're going to have numbers out here too. We're going to have 1 times 2 and then x times x. Okay, 1 times 2 and x times x. Now, here's what we can do with that. We could potentially, if we come down here and write our parentheses, one of these is going to go together, so you're going to get a 1x in one of these. And I do actually like to write the 1 here, and I'll show you why in just a second. And then one of these is going to get the 2x. Okay, so one gets the 1x factor and one gets the 2x factor. Our signs are plus plus, so we know that we're going to have a plus plus here. Okay, and then we're going to factor our last one. We're going to factor this 1 times 2. Okay, now this is where it gets to be a puzzle. You can put these in any different order. Just think if you had 5 factors of something like the number 12 or something that has multiple factors of the number 24. So you have multiple factors of that one number. You're going to have to try a bunch of different things. This time we only have 2, so we're going to have a 1 and a 2. I don't know which one goes where, but it does matter, because notice if we put the 1 in here and the 2 in here, when we do our FOIL, F-O-I-L, we're only doing the O and the I, but when we do that, we're going to end up with different middle terms. Okay, it's going to change based on what one we put where. So if I put the 2 here and the 1 here, then that's going to change what number it kicks out for the middle. All right, so let's try this one and see what we get. We might be correct. The reason I put the 1 here with this is because that way it just locks in, okay, that's this factor. That's the first factor. You don't have to put it, but you can. It might help you and it might not. All right, so here we go, the outers and the inners. So the outers are going to give me 2x, and the inners are going to give me 2x. 2x plus 2x equals 4x. We're really close, but we're supposed to get a 5x. So we have to keep trying different things. We have to move the puzzle pieces around in order to figure out what is going to give us that middle term. So what I would start with is I would just start with moving the C term, move those factors around and see what you get. All right, so let's go ahead and try it. So we had a 1 here, so now we're going to put a 2. We had a 2 there, now we're going to put the 1 there. Those are the only options that we have. Now, we could also move this 1 and this 2 over here, but the 1 and the 2 are the only options because those are the only factors of our A and C term. 1 and 2, those are the only numbers we're dealing with. Something there needs to give us 5 when we do this. And you might say, I don't think we're ever going to get 5 with those numbers. All right, hang on, just watch what happens. All right, so here we go. We have the outers, and then we have the inners. All right, so the outers, 1x times 1 gives me 1x. And then we add the inners. 2x times 2 gives me 4x. 1x plus 4x is going to equal 5x. Bingo. There we go. We got it. 5x is in the middle, and that is what we have. So let me erase some of this stuff so that you can see it. So this would be the actual answer. 1x, and in fact, now at this point, I would get rid of that 1x. I don't need it there anymore. I don't actually want it there anymore because it's not really proper to write it. So I'll just get rid of it, and now we have our answer. 2 plus x times 2x plus 1. That's our factors of 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. We unfoiled it. Now, if you want to check it, which I think you probably should, but again, we kind of checked it already down here, but if your math is correct down here, you should be correct. But if you want to check it, we can do that. So firsts, that's the F in FOIL, that's going to give us 2x squared, because x times x, and then our outers, and that's going to give us our plus 1x, our inners, and that's going to give us our plus 4x, and then our lasts, and that's going to give us our plus 2. add that together, and we do indeed get 2x squared plus 5x plus 2. All right, next one here, 8x squared minus 2x minus 1. If you're wondering where I'm at, I am on page 234 still. I'm just doing the examples there in your book. So the first thing that I can do is I could write my parentheses down here because I know it's going to look like this. A trinomial is going to factor down into two binomials, and we already know that from last chapter. And then we can do our factors of 8x squared and our factors of -1. Now, remember in this one, when we have a negative negative, that means that we're going to have a positive and a negative. We don't know which one's bigger at this point, and we don't know which one's smaller because this messes us up when we're doing our multiplication. It moves everything around. So it's just a bigger puzzle than the last ones were. There's just more. We know that we have a plus minus. We just don't know the order of the plus minus. Okay. So over here, we're going to get 1 times 8, 2 times 4, 3 doesn't go into it, and so we're done. I would suggest, I've told you this before, I would suggest starting with the 2 and 4. You can start with the 1 and 8 if you want, that's fine, but I would start with the 2 and 4 and work my way back up. Over here, we have actually we just have a 1 because technically we have our negative sign already down here. So we're just going to take the 1 and factor it. 1 times 1. Okay, easy money right there. Don't forget that we have an x and an x, so these are both going to get x's as well. So this one could be 2x, and this one could be 4x. Okay, then 1 and 1. All right, now we're going to try to FOIL it. We don't need to do first and the last, and we just need to do the outers and the inners. So outers are going to give us a negative 2x. See, and this is why it messes with the signs, because when we do this, it gives us a negative here, and technically that negative is going to be smaller, and in this case, this inner is going to give us a bigger positive number, because when we do this, we get a plus 4x. So when we do our math here, we get a 2x, a positive 2x. Look, we have a negative 2x. This is very important for you to understand. We are not done with this problem. We did not do this problem correctly because we got a positive 2x, and that is very different than a negative 2x. So what I like to do on this one is when I get that, I think, what are some different things that I could do? Well, I could move everything around, or I could try just swapping out my signs. So check this out. It's basically just, it's again, we didn't do this in the other ones, but sometimes you just flip your signs and that will give you the correct answer. So let's try it. Now let's make this the negative and this the positive and see what happens when we do this. So coming out here, we're going to get our 2x, and then here we're going to get our negative 4x. When we add those together, when we combine those, we end up with a negative 2x. Well, bingo, there we go. That negative 2x is what we're looking for. So this is, again, this is going to be our factors of this one. All right, so let's get rid of these, and we'll go ahead and circle this because this is our answer. 2x minus 1 and 4x plus 1. And you can see that in your book there on page 234. How do you check it? You FOIL it and you go back through it and just make sure that everything is correct. All right. If you'll turn over to page 235, this is a very important little caveat to these, and here it is. A always has to be positive. Okay, so if we want to write that, A is always positive. It has to be. If you're going to solve these, do not start with A being negative. That's going to mess you up. All right. So you might say, well, how do I solve these if A is negative? What do I do with that? Well, what I like to do is I like to pull out a -1 from that. Or in this case, there's actually another thing that we can pull out of this, and we could actually pull out a -3. You're like, -3? Well, here's the thing. You might say this 15 isn't negative. It doesn't have to be, but our goal is for this to be positive. That's what we're trying to do. So in doing that, I can say, oh, a 6 can be divided by 3, a 9 can be divided by 3, and a 15 can be divided by 3. Not just 3, because we want to get this positive. We want to divide everything by -3. What are we doing right now? You might be like, I seem to remember this. Yes, we are pulling out the GCF. The greatest common factor is -3. That means that we can pull out of here a -3. So that is going to be our common factor that comes outside. So now we're going to get a new trinomial with the -3 out front. And we're going to get a new trinomial that we need to factor. But we first have to common factor. Always, and this is, the book is going to trick you, the test, the quiz, they're going to trick you, and you're going to try to do this without common factoring. You have to remember the first step of any factoring problem is to see if you can find a common factor. If you can, pull it out. That's the way to start a factoring problem. All right, so here we go. We're going to cancel here. These cancel, and we're going to get a 2x squared. We're going to cancel here, and we're going to get a 3x. So that now becomes a plus 3x because our negatives canceled. Here we get a negative positive, so that means that when we divide by a negative, we get a negative. And so 3 into 15 goes 5 times. All right, so here we go. We now have a new trinomial that we need to try to factor. Let's change the color here of the pen. And now what we need to do is we need to follow our steps. So we still have our -3 outside, and then we have our new binomials coming in. And so our 2 here is going to factor to what? 1 times 2 and x times x. So our positive negative, okay, we've been here before, so we're going to have a positive negative. We don't know which one's which again. And now we can try our 1x here, so we'll just put an x here, and then a 2x here. We'll put our 2x over here. We might need to change that later, but for now, let's just try it and see what happens. Here we have a -5, and so we're going to factor that. And again, the negative is technically right here, so we don't have to factor out negatives. So it's just 1 times 5. That's the cool thing about 5. It's a prime number, so it's just 1 times itself. And we're just going to try it somewhere. So we'll say a 1 here and a 5 here, and we'll see what happens. When we multiply here, we're going to get -5x. When we multiply here, we're going to get a positive 2x. And this gives us a -3x. Notice when I get the inverse sign, so when I get a positive negative situation, I can do the same thing I did last time. And what was that? I just switched the signs around. So everything seems to be working out except for the signs. So just grab your eraser, erase these signs, and we're going to put new signs in there. So we'll make this the negative and this the positive and see what happens. So x times, so the outers is going to give me 5x. That's a positive this time. And then our inners is going to give me my -2x, and that gives me indeed my positive 3x right there. So that is my answer for this one. Let me erase this quick so you can see it and get rid of these down here. Now, don't forget, this is also part of your answer right here, this -3. So if we want to rewrite this and crunch it together, it would look like -3 times x minus 1 times 2x plus 5. And that would be my answer on that one. Okay, so again, it's a big puzzle, and you just keep connecting the puzzle pieces until you get it to lock into place, and you're like, oh, there it is, done. So these can take a while. These can, sometimes you get them in the wrong things. You got to flip the signs. Sometimes you got to move numbers around, whatever it is, in order to get the answer there. So if you missed anything, make sure to slide it back, watch it again. That's all I've got for you. Hope you have a good one. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.